excited? You guys ready for some news? All right, outstanding. I am the editor of the digitalbeats.com, Bill Hunt. Thank you. Thank you. On my immediate right is the Senior Director of Production for Shout Factory, Mr. Brian Ward. And on his right is the Senior Director of Marketing for Shout Factory and Scream Factory, Mr. Jeff Nelson. And you are here at the Inside an Indie Studio Shout Factory panel. And man, we're going to give you an inside look at how these guys do their thing. We're going to announce a bunch of great titles. It's going to be pretty outstanding. So, why don't we get right to it?
Yeah, we wanted to do things a little differently this year, where we really take you guys like into the process of how we put out these Blu-rays and DVDs, like step by step. So we're going to try and do that in 30 or 35 minutes, and then we'll have the great announcements afterwards in that Q&A. So, that being said, get your retro on, because we're going to take you through the wonderful, weird, and wild world of physical media.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, let's do it.
You guys know us to be a pretty retro brand, and we have modern titles and stuff, but this panel here, we're 80s bred. So you're gonna see a lot of things here on the panel that are 80s-ish. Some of the stuff we put out, some of the things we're not putting out, so when you see an image, don't go, oh my God, they're getting this.
Don't get fooled. We're not putting out Indiana Jones. Just in case you see it, we're not doing it.
So one title though, well, before we get into that, there are 5 main steps for us to put out a Blu-ray or DVD that we're going to take you through. First one, all of them up here. First one is acquiring the film, getting the actual film. Second one is the creative, the key art, the packaging. Third one is the production, the film itself, the transfers, extras. Fourth one is marketing, how we send that out to you guys. And then the fifth is the final product, and then how you guys receive it, and then what we do after that. Brian and I both worked on Teen Wolf a couple years ago, very 80s, and so we will probably cite that as an example a few times during the panel. But let's get down to
The question a lot of people ask, obviously, is how do you guys choose what you're going to do, and how do you get access to what you guys are going to, what you guys want to do?
Very good. So when we go right to acquiring, no, we don't have Dallas and Dynasty, but this is the business section, the cutthroat business side of it, so I had to have some fun here. But yes, to answer your question, so what can we get? This is a complicated process where we have relationships with studios out there that have film, television shows, partners that have independent films, and it's a question that, what can we get? What can we afford? I mean, it does come down to money. When we're getting films like Teen Wolf from a studio, they still own the film. We pay what's called an advance. And, we factor that out. Sometimes some films just aren't available to us. We'll work with a certain studio. We'll say Universal, and people say, well, you're working with Universal. Can't you get this film from there? It doesn't work like that. We don't have carte blanche.
Right. Well, because sometimes some studios actually hold back certain titles, right? Certain marquee franchises, because they may want to do something with them. That doesn't mean that they necessarily are doing something with them, but they do kind of protect certain things. So they grant access to some things, but not others, right?
And sometimes it takes years before they realize they aren't necessarily going to do anything with them. Yeah. So we've actually gotten a hold of what I would consider some marquee franchises and titles.
Oh yeah, I mean there's been titles that we've released that they were not available to us years ago, but sometimes we'll keep on knocking. Sometimes the studios change course and realize like, oh, we're able to give them an advance, some money that makes it attractive for them to give us their content. Then, when we're looking at the titles, it's sort of like, well, what can we add to it? If we're taking a title that's been released before on Blu-ray or DVD, We have the discussions of what's realistic, feasible into doing new transfers, into extras, who's available. Sometimes it's a little bit of a guessing game. We can get a title and we may think, oh, what's going on here?
There's a giant.
And a giant mutant alien insect comes onto the stage. And I said, "Oh my God, run for your lives!"
It's that big?
Yes, it's good size.
Wow. So special appearance by Peep Show.
That's all right. That's all right.
Wow.
If he survived that,
I deserve a
we should let
Blu-ray.
this go.
I expect to read about this in Home Media Magazine. Let me just tell you.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that-
Okay.
yeah.
So when we're doing our next version of Creep Show, we'll keep in mind the cockroaches. Anyways, and then it's a guessing game sometimes. Sometimes we'll get a title, and you'll think, okay, well, there's several of these actors. Yeah, they'll be available. Sometimes we don't always find that, but we'll have the discussion of what we can add unique to the product. Then it comes down to what will this sell. So we've been in the business now for 16 years, and Scream Factory for 7, and we've really been. We know what the sales are at this point. So if we have a title that's coming in, we can look to something that came out a year or two ago and see what the sales are like, and figure out sort of what that is. And that is a important component. Oh my God.
But the interesting thing is some of that
No,
is
it's still alive.
some of that though is gut instinct, right? I mean, sometimes you just have to look and see, like, has this title been released before? What's the demand? Has it been done right?
Yeah, some of it is, but it's a key component to try to put in the units because a budget has to be formed around it. So, we do have to mind the store at the end of the day, and if we know that something is going to sell a certain amount of units, we have to carve out a budget that allows, say, for Brian and his team in production to do what they need to do, for our creative team to do stuff, for us to do in marketing, and it's all sort of kind of like a little, almost like a puzzle.
Now, here's a question. In terms of let's say the number of units you sell, would that factor into the deal that you have with the studio too? So,
Yes.
for example, you
Yes.
do a certain number of units but not more, or
You know what? We always try to put a conservative number. We think it's going to sell this amount of units. Sometimes the title will overperform. We like that. That's the best thing. Sometimes the title underperforms. We don't like that.
This is what we project in order to be able to make it worthwhile. If it goes over that, we've succeeded.
right?
Yes. But we have to keep in mind. So sometimes people are like, well, why can't you do X, Y, Z in a title? Sometimes it's just a matter of like, we ran out of funds, or it would be cost prohibitive for us to do that.
Now, another question in terms of selecting titles. Do you guys sometimes say, we'd like to do this one, can we do a new transfer? Or are you like looking for the titles where there's already a transfer that's been done? Are you kind of writing that as well?
Both.
If it's a title that's never been released on Blu-ray before, we will look at the last transfer that the studio did.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we'll necessarily use it. We're probably more likely to, but if we look at that transfer and it was, say, done in 2005, it is far more behooving to us to just go ahead and do a brand new transfer.
Right, because the technology for this stuff, for transferring, it's amazing how fast it develops, and every couple of years, what you can do is so much better.
Yeah. And then, this is always everyone's favorite, is what will it cost? What will it cost you guys? So this is always one of those tricky things where, every boutique label, every independent prices Blu-rays a little differently based on what's called their overhead. Some companies have 3 people working for them, some have 5, some have 10, we have about 50, 60. Those things play a factor into what that suggested retail price is on, say, Amazon or wherever you guys shop, on top of the cost that it takes for the production, the manufacturing, the wraps, the distribution fees, sales stuff. I don't want to bore you, but there's a lot of things that go into it. And so some people will say, well, this company prices a similar title at this, why can't you do it that way? It's because the models are different. Our background is a little different. And believe me, we don't want it to be outrageously priced where you can't get it, but we also can't go out at, say, $15 for a Blu-ray right off the bat. It just would sink the project right away. So, you know, for the people, for those who are, you know, we're always price sensitive, but for those who want to wait, you know, we have sales, you know, maybe down the road, but like at the very beginning, that's when your higher price will be.
Well, the nice thing you guys do too is you do special like swag and like a poster, you know, stuff direct from the website.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going to pay that price initially, you get something extra for it.
Well, that's the bonus, because we know that while we can't go out and sell something for $19.99 necessarily, we price it so that retailers like Amazon can, if they want to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're not losing money on Amazon selling it for that price. That being said, we would prefer if you buy from our shoutfactory.com, and to do that, we entice people with posters, special lithos, and other add-ons.
Yeah.
Where we can.
Yes.
So getting to the next part, you know, we get the product and we put a coat of paint on it. So, you know, this is the fun part. As you guys know, we have a bonkers you know, output of stuff that is just like, I mean, look, Sound of Music and Babadook and Firesurfer. I mean, it just is all sort of kind of nuts. Each film that we get, as you can imagine, has its own personality. And what I mean by that is that, you know, we'll get a title, and some titles will have likeness rights issues where we can't feature certain actors or actresses. Some titles, we worked at studios where they don't have assets for the original theatrical poster, or we have to start from scratch, or we think that the theatrical poster is exactly what the fan wants, and so we're going to use that. So everyone is just not a cookie cutter. We have to see what's right for the property, what's going to resonate for the title itself.
And in the interest of full transparency, sometimes that also comes down to budget. If the projected sales are not as high as another title, we might not be able to afford a brand new, beautifully painted cover, so we might go with the poster.
Right. Yes. If it's a collector's edition, chances are we're going to do a new illustrated approach, and that is to because it freshens the title, it just gives it a little bit more excitement.
It makes it feel special.
Yeah, it does.
A little more special.
There have been times, though, that we have, Death Becomes Her is a great example, Psycho 2 is a good example, where we went out to do a collector's edition, and unfortunately, we went through the legal process and found that it was really hard. You had to go to the estates or the actors themselves to get sign-offs, and I know you've worked a lot on that with titles as well. That can be very challenging, hit and miss.
It can be a nightmare sometimes.
It can be. It can be. So yes, we talked a little bit more about what the main cover is, and then the approval process. I touched a little bit about that. So when we're doing our packaging, we're routing it internally to a lot of departments. The marketing person that's on the project, the production person, creative team, sales, president, a lot of people, and then we also have to send it back to the licensor, whether that be the studio or whomever we license it from for their approval. And it goes through the proofreading process. There's usually about 3 or 4 rounds. And every now and then a mistake still gets by with all those eyeballs, and believe me, we hear it online, and we'll look and we're like, yep, that's a spelling mistake there. We're human at the end of the day, but it does go through, and thankfully it's not, it's not widespread. It doesn't happen all the time. This is where I turn more over to Brian Moore, because we talk about the production and that process.
There's my guy. So we talk a little bit about the transfers. Again, if it's a title that's never been released, we look for an HD master. If it's an HD master that we don't feel is up to par, we will go looking for the right sources to create a new one. Sometimes we can find them. Sometimes the sources that we find are even worse than the masters that we were originally given. And you know, you've dealt with that a lot.
All the time.
We will take those and we will scan them, usually at 2 or 4K, depending. Again, that can also depend on the budget, how many we expect to sell, because that process is not a cheap one. And so we will go through and do that, and then we will do a brand new color correction. I am currently working on a title right now that I believe we announced at last year's Comic-Con, Snow Falling on Cedars, and I am working very closely with people who were very close to that project. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And sometimes you're working with their schedules,
Yeah.
because they've got big movies coming out.
Right. Well, the good thing is that you actually do work with the filmmakers whenever you can to try to get their input and color grade, all that kind of stuff, because a lot of companies don't.
It really helps when you've got approved by
Yeah.
on
Yes.
the back of the cover, because it's not like we want to try to put our stamp on what the movie looks like. A color grader doesn't necessarily have the logs, the paper logs that were there when they were doing it in the 80s or the 90s.
But not only that, the technology is different. So if you're doing a color grade back in the film, all analog era, the tools you have now are completely different.
The numbers aren't even the same.
Yeah.
You're looking for a 10 and it's not the same color. So a lot of times you have to go looking at the reference material. The question is, how old is the reference material? Because it's very possible that reference material is faded and the thing that you think you're coloring correctly is not vibrant enough or is not what was intended. So we have to go looking into that. So we want to use the directors of photography, we want to use the directors as much as humanly possible to approve those. And that includes both the film and the audio.
Right. And one of the things I put up there with the audio is sometimes music becomes involved in our releases. It's happened in the past, I think most famously with WKRP in Cincinnati, where there will be music issues that will come up that, you know, we'll have to clear, and sometimes songs are super expensive.
No one ever anticipated putting these things out on home video and
Right.
for ownership. So in the case of WKRP, you can't just have Led Zeppelin. You gotta clear Led Zeppelin. And by the way, they may not have cleared it then either.
Right.
We found cases where the moment that the episode aired, they then went and recorded over that master with a less or a more copyright-friendly music version. So if there are versions of those episodes on our disc that don't have the proper music, it's probably because that master physically doesn't exist.
Yeah, and the artists are really sensitive about that, right? Especially in the era of streaming, right? It's like they're really sensitive about it. And a lot of times, the cost of clearing music depends on the number of units you're selling.
Yes, I mean, there are some titles I'll just throw out there that, you know, if they ever get released, it'll be a small miracle. A film called Little Darlings, Looking for Mr. Goodbar. There's even a horror film called Savage Harvest from the early 80s. They have Beatles songs in there. I mean, they're just, you know, like you said, you didn't predict that when they made the movies that it was going to be, you know, a headache to clear that stuff. And it's unfortunate because some of those titles, you know, definitely deserve some, you know, release, but we can't. The biggest thing, of course, is, you know, getting down into the extras. I mean, Teen Wolf, I'll just throw it out there. You did a
2.5-hour documentary.
That's longer.
It's an hour longer than the movie.
That's insane.
The movie is a bonus feature on our disc. Yeah, because that was a movie where nearly everybody wanted to come to the table. Like everybody loved working on that movie, and in many cases it defined their careers. So those folks, and we do run into a case where sometimes they're a little hesitant to come talk about it because that movie defined their careers. Not just that movie, but any movie. If that's the only thing I'm known for, do I really want to go talk about it? And in the case of Teen Wolf, there was one actor who was a little wary until his son told him, or asked him, is Shout Factory doing it? And he said, yeah, and he goes, then you gotta do it.
That's great.
And
That's
he
very
told
cool.
me that on the day that I interviewed him, and I was exceptionally proud of that. You know, it's gotten to a point where they are now finding out that we try to do it right, and you know, we're not looking to do any sort of you know, true Hollywood story. If we can get good stories of conflict, like the Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai has some really good stories of conflict in there with the studio, we'll certainly use it, but you know, we're not out for.
Well, and it's interesting you say that. So, you know, when we do these extras, sometimes we have to submit them to our partners, our studios, for a review, and some things
Or
get
the
cut.
cast and the cast
Or
and
the cast and crew, and sometimes things get cut, you know, for either being too inflammatory or too this or that. You know, sometimes we look at raw footage of the cast and crew that comes in, it's like, oh, if only you guys knew even more of the story. But we have to make those calls because, you know, we do live in a world where, you know, we don't own the films, first of all, so we can't take the heat if somebody comes out legally. But yeah, this process is always very interesting. People are amused when we contact them sometimes on titles, that people have remembered these films all these years. Some of these people flat out turn us down, which is their prerogatives. Some people ask for money that I don't even know where they're coming up with this.
It would bust the budget, right?
Yeah, it would just, and it's unfortunate because we try to negotiate and we try to, you know, we come very politely and you know, the fans would like this and, you know, and we would like this, but.
I was once quoted, you know, obviously won't say who or for what project, but they were like, yeah, I'm happy to do it. 10 grand?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm only wanting to interview for you for about 45 minutes.
Right. Well, and then you get the other people who just like, this was just a job, right? And it was like sandwiched in between 3 other jobs, and they barely remember anything about it, right? And they were surprised that people like loved it and responded that much to it.
But then there are other cases where they wouldn't necessarily do it. Like they don't necessarily do a whole lot of bonus features. In our case, Jeff Goldblum did Till Midnight. End of the Night. Thank you.
So many titles.
It is Saturday of Comic-Con. End of the Night, he did that for us as, you know, it's not that he didn't want to talk about it. He generally doesn't do a lot of bonus features, and then, you know, we happen to have a very enthusiastic director who called him up, and suddenly it became,
if you can leverage a vision like that, right?
Yeah.
like, yes.
Sometimes
And it turned out to be one of the greatest interviews, and if you've ever heard episode 1 of our Shout Takes podcast, it's the entire Jeff Goldblum interview. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. It's the most Goldblum thing you've ever heard. He needs to do more raw interviews.
Before moving on, though, just one other thing that isn't up here as a bullet point is just, even when all of this is done, the film transfers are done, the extras are done, then it goes to the process of where authoring, and that's where the menus are built, that's where things are QC'd, quality control, right? Right.
And you guys do a lot of the production work actually in-house in terms of authoring.
We do.
Some of the authoring, is done up in our sister company. We own, it's Shout Eugene.
Yes.
They're in Eugene, Oregon.
Right.
And they handle a lot of a very hefty amount of our authoring, but we also go to third-party houses as well. And we have some fantastic group of authors that do that.
And just to put in perspective too, I was thinking about this before the panel, we average probably about maybe 25 releases a month for 12 months, and then add new movies that we get digitally and for you know, cable and theatrical day and date. It's a lot. It's a factory on some levels, and believe me, we feel it. We like it, but you know, it's a lot to juggle.
No lie. This I brought this as a reference for some things. This is our physical production schedule through the end of the year, and these are all titles. The highlighted ones are all ones that I'm physically working on right now. Like during this panel, I am working on.
Yeah.
And each title is at a different spot in the flow.
Totally.
Yes.
It's like, it's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
And you know, in terms of we talk about authoring these titles, when you put a Blu-ray in your player, it's not just a movie on a disc, it's like literally software There's a video file that's part of it and an audio file that's part of it, but it is like computer software, right?
You gotta map the disc.
Yeah, every interactivity, every button push, every menu, all of that.
Meanwhile, there are third-party QC houses that we hire who literally have people who do nothing but sit there in front of their TVs and both watch the movie for picture and sound, not necessarily for content, but like for picture and sound. And then if there's another soundtrack, they've got to do it.
Yeah, there's 3 commentaries. They've got to listen to 3 commentaries.
Yeah, and if
Left, right,
left, right, does the arrow
Subtitles.
Yeah.
It really is fascinating at the very end stage when it's all built together to look for everything.
So a lot of times, like if you wonder why, like maybe a title gets announced but it gets delayed, or it says, or these guys say it's coming but they haven't got a street date for quite a while. It's like, it's because these things shift around.
Oh, totally.
You know, because of production.
TBD is a thing for us.
Right, yes. So anyways, the stuff gets built and then we market it towards you guys. We are the cheerleaders here in marketing, and we have a few steps to go into that, which is, you know, we have a PR team that, depending on the title, will send out the press mailing, and that's very valuable to us because the press outlets, their reviews, you guys see, you know, Digital Bits being one of them. You know, that's a very important process. I mean,
to just get the word out, right?
Yeah.
It's like get people excited and get the word out and get a buzz going.
And I'm simplifying what PR does. They also have interviews with talent sometimes that, you know, they will arrange. You know, I often tell my PR team that they do have one of the hardest jobs in the company because they have to deal with the personalities and their managers.
Jeff is really tough to deal with.
But the managers and the you know, the talent, it can be a little tricky, a little dicey. But and so for sales, you know, and marketing talk to our sales team, and we'll look at each title and we'll say, okay, well, where can we get this placed? Is this a Walmart title? Is this a Best Buy title? Is this a title that's only going to be on Amazon on our site? I mean, we calibrate that very quickly. Some people will say, well, why don't you have this in, you know, this mom and pop store? Well, maybe this mom and pop store didn't order it for a variety of reasons. I mean, you know, we can't force, you know.
Well, yeah, and a lot of retailers they've reduced the amount of shelf space that they devote to discs, so it's harder to get your discs into shelves and all that stuff. But do all you guys follow Shop Factory and Screen Factory on social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that?
Thank you.
See, one of the great things is that you guys talk directly to your audience, and you guys have built an interaction and a communication with a loyal audience. That's important because people who buy your product know the quality of your product, right? They know you guys are doing your best to do really good stuff. You have a nice track record. Not every studio, I mean, it's amazing to me even that the major studios don't do this, but I love that you guys do that. You guys, like, communicate directly with your audience.
We were brought up sort of on this, you know, being an indie, there was this ideology of we're doing it for the fans, so we would kind of be stupid if we didn't listen to them.
Yeah.
There are titles that I've worked on that I have never even heard of until I was assigned them. But my philosophy is that even if it's not my favorite title, it's someone's.
It's someone's, absolutely.
So I need to go out and find out what those fans want on the discs.
Yeah.
I do everything I can to get them, and so that means going out to the fans directly and talking to them. We had a website at one point where it was, we had forums where I would go in and personally address a lot of the topics, and we have several social media folks who run Twitter and Instagram and all those things. Some of those people are in the room right now. I don't know if they want to be addressed, but just know that there are people in this
There's Dana live tweeting right now.
Yeah. She is our Twitter account. So you know, and she does everything she can to communicate everything from us to people.
And the cool thing is sometimes the fans of these movies actually know of people who might want to be involved or were involved in the film. They might know what elements are. Sometimes you never know, because sometimes, most of the times, you guys who are the fans are the biggest detectives of this stuff. You know information about these films, and a lot of times even the filmmakers themselves have forgotten. And so that's a resource too, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's very appreciated. There have been times where we've had fans direct us to prints of films or uncut scenes or things that we wouldn't have had access to. So
There are titles, by the way, that I'm going to announce. There's at least one that I'm going to announce tonight that I've sort of held off on even starting to work on, because I know that when I announce it, that's going to give me the opportunity to ask fans to help me give me stuff.
That's outstanding.
Things that I know
That's
I
cool.
want. I'm going to say,
That's cool.
Can you hook me up?
okay, so moving along, at the end of the day, then it becomes the final product, and this is where you guys are basically, and it's not even basically, you're a judge and jury at the end of the day. This is where you know, your word of mouth, if something's right or wrong, you know, and it's told to us via social media or customer service, we take all of this stuff in. People sometimes say, well, how do you know how well a title is doing? We look at pre-orders first, and to see how something is coming in. If something's strong, like Quatermass in the Pit is coming in 2 weeks, and it's a strong title. Another title, you know, who's coming out on the same week isn't doing so well. That being said, sometimes we don't get a performance gauge until 6 months, 1 year, or sometimes even 3 years. But generally speaking, that first 6 months or 1 year will give you an indication of is that title doing well, and then can we get more titles like that? So then it becomes sort of like a circular, you know, type of thing. Well, this did well, so let's go and get this kind of content.
There's also a certain amount of, imagine, price sensitivity too. Like, you know, so when you have a week when there's a ton of great titles coming out, you can't always afford to buy all of them right away, so you might wait for the sale the next month, or if it's close to Black Friday, people might wait for Black Friday to just load up and buy a bunch of stuff, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And we're cognizant of that. We don't think that because a title didn't instantly sell out its first run, that it doesn't mean that there isn't an audience out there for it. We're pretty sure there's an audience, and then we just wait.
Sometimes it just takes time.
Yep, sometimes it really, I mean, word of mouth, let's face it, is just really the best marketing. And if you have good product, good extras, people are excited about it, that does more for us than, you know, sometimes a paid ad, you know, or boosted posts on social media. This presentation is a game over, but what happened there?
Did you get all that? Did you guys get all that?
I actually didn't see those.
I did. I was like, okay.
There was a
That's not surprising.
There's a screen up there.
There we go. Okay.
So,
as you said, Saturday at Comic-Con. Let's get into some announcements.
So we're going to start with Shout Factory first, right?
Yeah, Shout Factory and Shout Select. The very first thing that we are announcing tonight is, several of these are my favorites, the Anne Bancroft collection. We've done a number of collections like this where we have focused on someone and their careers, and we think that we've got some pretty great movies in this lineup, including a couple I haven't even seen yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing them. Don't Bother to Knock from 20th Century Fox. The Miracle Worker, of course, The Pumpkin Eater, The Graduate, Fatso, To Be or Not to Be, Agnes of God, and 84 Charing Cross Road.
Some good catalog.
So next one is one that I'm extremely excited about. We're trying to do a collector's edition of Twins. This is one of those where I might need some help. People can hook me up with certain celebrities that don't do a lot of bonus material. It doesn't mean we're not going to try, but we're looking forward to that one for sure. Another one that I'm looking forward to asking for help on. Doing the wizard. This is one that I am actually going to ask for, and I'm going to go ahead and put this out there now. I don't just want people who worked on the film. This movie is bigger than just the film. I want Nintendo fanatics. I want, you know, the people who ran the the call centers at Nintendo Power. I want anyone who can tell me about video games and how they became, how they allowed a movie like The Wizard to basically become a 90-minute commercial for Nintendo in Super Mario Bros. 3 and the Power Glove. And it worked very well on that guy over there. This is his. But that's one that I'm extremely excited about. Also, another one that I really am looking forward to, Very Bad Things. Very dark comedy. This one's going to be a whole lot of fun. And then we've also got Richard Pryor in Brewster's Millions. So this one will be a little tougher because there are a few people still up here. But we are doing everything we can to put this out in the best possible edition that we can.
You gotta get Stephen Collins. He's like, right?
Yeah.
He's like the only guy left, right?
Maybe.
The girl?
That
The girl?
would be a little problem.
Okay.
But in addition to that, we are working on, this is something that a lot of people have asked us for years. We do occasionally still do, we dip our toes into music, and we do vinyl. And so we are going to put out Mystery Science Theater's Clowns in the Sky on vinyl, which we don't have an image for here, but that is one that I know a lot of folks have looking forward to. But we're not just doing physical media. Shout Factory TV is doing a whole lot more original content as well, including a series of videos that we're doing right here at Comic-Con with Elliot Rutstein, who's doing an amazing job taking you through the ins and outs of Comic-Con. Literally, not just the stuff we're doing. It's basically an Anthony Bourdain's travelogue of Comic-Con. And I highly recommend you check it out on our social, Instagram, Twitter, and Shout Factory TV. But later in August, or early August, 10th through the 12th, we will be running a marathon of sword and sorcery movies, which you are taking a look at. These are the swords that you have. Part of that marathon is a celebrity D&D tournament, or a campaign that we did with Deborah Ann Wool of Daredevil, DC All Access's Tiffany Smith there. She was also Meghan Markle in the Harry and Meghan Becoming Royal movie. Todd Stashwick from 12 Monkeys. Jasmine Bueller, who was also part of Deborah's Relics and Rarity show on Twitch. And then hidden a little bit back there is Mark Bernardin, who is an amazing writer of television. He's a WGA winner, did Castle Rock. Just had an incredible announcement here at Comic-Con. He's working on a couple of other shows. He's been a journalist for a while. They all got together and played D&D with us, and you'll be able to watch the entire game. So yeah.
Okay, so we got 10 minutes, and I'm going to go through.
Now it's time to Scream Factory now.
Yes, I'm going to. I said last year that we had our biggest announce. I was wrong. This is the most. We have 14 releases, we have 21 films, and we have 3 NECA figures.
And there's some really good ones in here.
And yes, and I trigger happy some of them, and some of them you saw, but anyways, let's go through it. Okay, so those of you who know that we are doing classic films, that we've already done Universal Horror Volume 1 and 2, we will be doing it Volume 3. That's coming out later on this year. Those will include Tower of London, Man-Made Monster, The Black Cat, 1941, and Horror Island. For those of you who are fans of Hammer films, we have a lot more coming, but we have 2 more coming out by the end of the year. One is called The Abominable Snowman from 1957. This is Peter Cushing's first Hammer film, and he did 21 of them. The second of them is 1971's gender-bending film Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde from the director of The Vampire Lovers. It's quite a trip. Next is a top 5 favorite for me. It's the 80s slasher film The Fan with Michael Biehn and Lauren Bacall. I just said it as a top 5 film for me. I am just ecstatic. I'm working on this. I love it.
Already the disc is turning into a top favorite of yours.
Oh, totally. I have interviews lined up. I'm super excited about this one. 1979's Nature Gone Amok movie Prophecy.
Woo!
From the director of The Manchurian Candidate and from the writer of The Omen. Talia Shire from Rocky is in this, and effects by Tom Berman, who did Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1978. Cat People, also a personal favorite of mine. I'm so excited for this one. Next, 1971's Let's Scare Jessica to Death. This got a little leaked on the internet a couple of weeks ago. That's fine, it's okay, it's official now. A lot of people like this very creepy, underrated psychological thriller. Going on into 1991 with Body Parts from director Eric Red, who did Bad Moon, which stars Jeff Beatty from The Lawnmower Man. Moving on to 1981's Road Games, we'll be doing a collector's edition of this. Stars Scream Queen Jamie Lee Curtis in one of those roles that she did right around Prom Night and Terror Train, and also Stacy Keach. It's a good film now. From the director of Psycho 2. Next up, 1992's Pet Sematary 2. Director Mary Lambert, who did the first one in 1989 based on Stephen King. She did the follow-up sequel. She has actually been campaigning for us to put this out for the last couple of months since the remake of Pet Sematary came up, and we are happy to bring this to the table. 1979's Slick Rent retelling of Dracula. This is on Blu-ray already, but we are going to make this a 2-disc set that will have 2 versions of the film. It's the same film, but we are going to include the theatrical version as it was originally color timed. The director preferred a muted color that's been on home video, I think, ever since the 90s, so we're going to give fans 2 options. So people will be able to see it on Blu-ray as they originally saw it in 1979. Next, if you're a big fan of The Fly, we've got 5 Fly films for you in one big collection. This is the original Fly from '58, The Return of the Fly, The Curse of the Fly, the 1986 remake of The Fly, and its sequel, The Fly 2, 1989. Speaking of Jeff Goldblum, 1985's Silver Bullet with Stephen King, Gary Busey, Corey Haim, and Werewolves is coming as a collector's edition. We last year did a NECA figure of Angela from Night of the Demons that sold out. We're bringing her friends to the table this Halloween with 2 NECA demons, Suzanne and Stooge, that's their character names. These will be sold as an exclusive 2-pack on our site at shoutfactory.com, and actually pre-orders will go up later on tonight. So get them while they last. We are not done with NECA figures. We're doing a Slumber Party Massacre Killer from the 1982 original. What you're seeing up there is the prototype. That'll also come with a 4K scan of the film and a new steelbook. So we're looking at that for January.
This next title is so exciting. I'm so pumped that you guys are doing this.
Well, with the lead up with that, we're going to tackle another John Carpenter movie with his beloved Big Trouble in Little China.
Right? Is that good?
We are, this is a 2-disc set, and we are going to do date and date your choice of a collector's edition or a steelbook. So it'll be the same content, but we're doing 2 pieces of creative, and it's a big title.
You guys are basically going to go all out. Right?
Yes, we are going to do that. And last but not least, don't have a heart attack, but the original My Bloody Valentine from 1981 is coming back to this set. Unrated cut, theatrical cut, new extras. We're super fans of these films. I have this poster in my living room, for God's sakes. Super excited for this one. So, whew, okay.
Now we have time for about 5-10 minutes of Q&A. How much time do we have? 5? Okay, let's everybody who has a question, want to come up to the mic, let's start getting as many questions as we can. And try to be quick so we can get as many as we can.
And also, while we love suggestions, and we want to hear them for sure, we're also available outside. If you have questions, you might want to keep it to a question rather than suggestions, because that'll just end up in, we'll send it to acquisition.
We're on social media.
Right, we're on social media. Suggestions.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, guys.
Hey,
I remember hearing like a few years ago or something that you guys were working on a Blu-ray release of Ralph Bakshi's Coonskin, and like the production just sort of stopped. Stopped. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if this like production was true, and I'm wondering like if it is or what happened to it, etc. And if you've considered tackling Bakshi's other stuff.
I mean, I can say that we were working on it. Unfortunately, we hit certain hurdles with masters and rights and other issues that made it really, really hard to put out in a way that we wanted to. So it ended up getting the rights reverted, and we ended up, I think, trading it for another title that came out. That, it was one of those situations. But yeah, I mean, it was something we were working on for a little while.
Hi, I'd like to ask if you'd consider working with a comic book artist to do a Comic-Con exclusive cover or sleeve, and if so, what comic artist would you like to work with?
Ooh, that's interesting.
I would love it. I mean, one of the issues with Comic-Con exclusives is they have to be Comic-Con exclusives, and sometimes the print runs become a little problematic, but we have done exclusives like the Babadook, LGBTQ, the Pride Month, exclusive, so it's not out of the question.
Yeah, it all depends on the property and how well we think it's going to sell, and also just it really boils down to the property itself. And again, we have a short window, obviously, to sell it at Comic-Con, and even a short window afterwards. But
But it also comes down to likenesses as well. So you've got to find that comic book artist who, if you're going to use likenesses, really needs to be able to nail it. And so that can be a little problematic sometimes, but it's certainly something I would love to do.
Could also be something for like as a website exclusive too, not even just Comic-Con, just something on the website.
Sure.
Yeah, any artist you might want to work with?
I mean, if Jim Lee's on the table, I'll take it. Yeah.
thank you.
Hi Jeff, my question is actually for you, and forgive me, this is a little too inside baseball. So your products are a little niche, like a lot of things that are very exclusive to certain type of fans and whatnot. So, and clearly you have a following. So then how do you market to some of your products or some of your more mainstream titles or so they reach outside of those people that are following your social media or particularly your brand, etc.?
Well, the way that I approach it, when I have a really niche product, when I have something that is really towards maybe a small group of fans, a cult following there, basically, I gotta get to them first. I have to get to them, and I have to make sure that they like the product, that they like what we're putting out there, because what happens then is then that base actually does what I sometimes cannot do for resources or budget or whatever. They'll tell their friends. If we've nailed a project and we've got it, they'll tell their friends and they will help out more. I mean, look, sometimes in a budget, if I had thousands of dollars and I could go out and reach it, but sometimes you can spend that money, and if it's a title that's really niche, the mainstream isn't going to go for it no matter what you do. So always go for your core fan first on the project, and then hope it will, cascade from that.
And we do that in-house too. Like the fans within, like if there's a movie that is something that someone in-house loves,
Like the fan.
yeah, then we will listen to those people.
Yes.
The fan.
The fan. That's good advice though, just overall, and I've seen that over 20 years covering this industry and all the people who do the really good special editions. You go after the fans, and if you make the fans happy, everything else is great.
Absolutely.
One more question.
Love that, Jack.
Oh,
I just want to say that Creepshow and Gravity Falls were some of my favorite releases from last year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect Blue was made into a pretty great release. Any chance of any more Satoshi Kon pictures?
We would love to take those to our acquisitions team. We are really loving our anime partners right now. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see titles, popping up for sure. Just stay tuned.
Can we sneak in two more?
Can we sneak it
Real
in?
quick?
We're overtime, but be quick.
Quick.
Okay, one of my favorite things that you guys have been doing is your partnership with NECA doing the action
Yes,
figures.
we love them.
Yeah, and the new ones you just showed are awesome. I was just curious as to how do you decide which figures you're gonna make depending on the movie, and is that something you want to keep doing?
So really quickly is that, again, remember how I said it, every title has its own personality. It's about sort of what do we have, than like, for instance, we just did Tom Atkins for Night of the Creeps. That had never been made, he had never been made into a doll before. That seemed like a no-brainer. It sold out. He's a horror legend. It made sense. But we were also able to work with Sony and Tom Atkins and get NECA on board, and our finances worked out. So there's a few things that go, oh, I just gotta stop. I've never had that.
Real quick, what's your question? One last question?
Sure. Question is, how many units do you have to sell to be interested in a movie title?
It depends on the title.
Yeah.
It depends on the title and how much it's going to cost.
I would say this, if it's not above 2,000 or 3,000,
Well, that's pretty low.
yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you very much. Follow Shout Factory on YouTube.